and welcome to the Leadership Edge. I am your host, Ted Gorski. The Leadership Edge is a show that focuses on leadership topics that are affecting you on a daily basis. The goal of the show is to provide you some insights and some tips and techniques that will help you, the leader, in your day-to-day activities. When what we'll do is really examine these so that we can really get you to really think about how you can enhance your leadership abilities wherever they may be. So today you can see I got a little motivation. There was a little game on TV recently called the Super Bowl. Maybe you heard about it. And it gave me some internal motivation for today's show. But producer Bill, to get me in the mood, can you throw me a pass?
Heads up, Ted.
Caught it! Ah!
Attaboy.
Spike it just like the Gronk man. Well, today's show, we're going to focus on the leadership areas regarding the New England Patriots. What are the lessons that we can learn as leaders from the New England Patriots? And I had this motivation just by watching the game, watching how it all kind of unfolded. And when you really reflect on the greatness of kind of how this team has developed over the years and how they've been involved in pretty much in big game after year, you know, I said to myself watching the game, there's some lessons there that we as leaders can take, not only from Bill Belichick, but from the organization in general, that you as a leader should be thinking about. Because 15 years of this kind of unprecedented, kind of high-performing team is really, there's some success there. And as I always say to producer Bill, success leaves tracks. So we're going to examine what I consider to be some of the major topics and major issues, my top 5 leadership lessons from watching the New England Patriots. Now, for many of you out there who are not Patriots fans, I don't want you to turn the channel. Now, this is all about leadership and looking at how does an organization develop and be so successful, because we as leaders should really look at how and why this is really happening. So let us dive in to what I consider some of the key leadership lessons for the Patriots. And here's the first one that I think is vital, is developing a culture. What's really interesting is when you look at this Patriots organization, over the years, what they've really developed is this culture of excellence. And what's really big about this is they really look for perfection in everything they do. You will hear Tom Brady or you'll hear the players talk about how they play hard, but they also talk about how they practice hard. And part of that is really making each play be as perfect as possible. And what they're always striving for is excellence in what they do. If it's a wide receiver, it's making that cut at the precise area. If it's the people who are blocking, it's making sure they're working together as a team. But every day you will hear them say at practice, we are always striving to be excellent. And you actually will hear Bill Belichick say that in those press conferences where, for the most part, he doesn't say much. But what he's really saying is the team has to get better. We all have to work together better. And what he's always trying to do is really build excellence in every part of the organization. But guess what? Because of that, every player they bring in really has to really attract to that kind of culture. They have to buy into the whole process of excellence, because the second point is about working hard. You hear that quite a bit from these players, that they study hard, they practice hard, because what they try to do is really be focused for the game. This team does not, you know, when they're kind of putting together their culture, does not cut corners on hard work. I mean, you'll hear players from other teams when they're interviewed for the first time about being in this organization, they talk about how they have to really study hard and watch film. And that's all a culture. And that's what Bill Belichick looks for players. But the other part of this culture is being on the same page. you'll see and hear about how these players, when they come into the culture, it's not about it's not about me, it's about the team. And all about is about the team succeeding. It's about the team being successful. So they're all on the same page with that. You can hear players who are coming over who are stars in some other teams, but when they come into the organization known as the Patriots, they realize the really important thing is winning and being on the same page. So the statistics are thrown out the window, but they're all on the same page in regards to making sure what the ultimate goal is, which is to be world champions. So he gets, when I say he, Bill Belichick as the leader looks for that kind of makeup when we start looking at players is, do they buy into that process? Do they buy into that principle? And the last thing is all about results. You know, everything they talk about is about the result. The result is winning the game. And if they don't win the game, it's all about, okay, what do we not do to affect that result? So this culture is just so focused on looking at results, and it's part of their DNA. And that's why it's real important. And the results is winning as a team. The result is not about who had the most catches or the most yardage. It's about, did you do what you needed to do to help us achieve our ultimate goal? And that's what you look at when you look at Bill Belichick. When he assesses his players from year in, year out, he always looks at how does what someone participate and what result they get, how do they help the team succeed? So you as a leader, when you look at developing a culture, what is your culture in your organization? What do you believe in? What do your team believe in? Do they know what the culture is? And when you bring new people aboard, do they embrace that? Are they part of it? Is it a winning culture? So for you as a leader, one of the things you should be looking at is your corporate culture on your team is it winning or is it not? Which is a very important piece. Point number 2, the people. It ties into the first point, but it's really key important here is hiring the right people. What you'll notice with the Patriots when they kind of come in and will draft players, or when they kind of go off and get free agents to come on the team, they're looking for the right people. Now, what's the right people? Love the double quotes in the air. Right? The right people are the people who will attain and be part of this culture. Will they work hard to be part of it? One of the things I read about Bill Belichick is he looks for players who eat, drink, and think football 24/7. He wants people who are married to football. Now, what is he saying? Well, he wants someone who wants to be totally interested in terms of what football is, how they can be better as a player, but more importantly, are they going to do the studying that they need to do to be successful? Because the one thing you'll notice from the Patriots from game to game is they may change their strategy very quickly. And hiring the right people is you need players who can adapt to that very, very quickly. You might see other players on other teams who have difficulty kind of dealing with game plans that are constantly changing. The Patriots could change 2, 3, 4 times a game, and they need players who are flexible to be able to adapt to that. And that's part of the things they look at when they're hiring the right people. So he's looking for that kind of mindset that's going to mind meld into his culture, because they'll know if that person does that, they'll be successful in the Patriot organization. The other part of hiring the right people is put them in positions to succeed. What you'll see is when they go and bring people in, what they do is they put them in positions that they're going to be successful in, right? They won't put someone in a quarterback position. Well, God forbid we think about that, right? But they won't put it if a person can't do the job. He looks for players that might do something that's their strength, and the coach Belichick puts them in that role and says, this is what I need you to do. So he looks at positions of strength in each of his players, because that's going to add value to the team, and that adds value to the culture itself. So he constantly looks at players to see what strengths they bring to the table so that they can help the team be successful. And lastly, knowing your role. The key thing with this organization is each player understands their role. It's very clear to them. One player may know my job is to be on defense and go and sack the quarterback. Another one might be I have to cover a certain receiver. It might be, okay, I'm a running back, but I'm great in catching the ball. The key thing with Bill Belichick in this organization is he clearly lets his players know what their roles are, which makes them very successful. So you as a leader in your organization, are you hiring the right people? Are you having the right people who can fit into your culture? Do you know what the various strengths of your people so you put them in positions to succeed? I will tell you in my coaching practice, I'll see when I'm working with leaders, a lot of them will place people in roles that they really can't do, which is they're really setting them up for failure. That's the last thing we want to do when we're working with our team. So analyze for yourself, am I really leveraging the strengths of the people on the team? Do I know what they are? Now, if you don't know what they are, that's probably one step you need to start with. But also, do they know their role? Do they understand what they need to do to be successful for the organization, but more importantly for your team? Leads us to the third point, point number 3, loyalty. The one thing I've read over and over again, the various books about the organization, is there is honest feedback. You will see that the players get that Monday after the game when they look at the game film, and the coaches will give them honest feedback. You know, their feedback will tell them what they did right and what they did wrong. But what's also very interesting here is that the coach, Belichick, stands by his players. When he's up on the podium after a game, and let's say they didn't do so well, you don't see him lambasting a player. You don't see him kind of criticizing the player in front of the media. What you'll hear him just basically say, which is quite canned, is we have to tackle better as a team, or we have to be more prepared as a team, or the team has to do this, but also we as coaches have to coach better. What he is doing is not putting the spotlight on anyone in particular, but he may do that in private, but he never does that in public. And a lot of players even kind of talked about that when I kind of reviewed and looked at articles about this team, is they really appreciate that because they also think that he's very fair, which is the third point here in loyalty. He's very fair in regards to his feedback. He's very fair in terms of his approach. And that's very important when you start looking at least athletes in terms of giving them feedback. So, I mean, part of loyalty is very important, and it's a two-way street. And you will hear players say they enjoy working for him. They enjoy playing for this coach because he's no nonsense and he pretty much tells them straight out, but he also stands by them as players. And you may have seen that after this in the celebrations where a lot of the players were talking to him and you could hear those comments on the field. So you as a leader on your team, where does your loyalty stand? Do you stand by the people in your team? Do you give them honest and open feedback? And you're doing that in a private way, that you're not doing it in public. And most importantly, are you fair? Are you someone that's fair when you're kind of working with the members of your team and working with people in your organization? That's a huge trait that's very important for you as a leader to be thinking about when you're dealing with situations in the office. Fourth point. This is a mantra, but it's really interesting. It's do your job. Right, Producer Bill?
Absolutely.
Do your job. And it ties into what we talked about earlier about hiring the right people. This is a mantra, but it's really very key when you think about this organization. It's all about understanding your role. You will hear, if you hear little snippets during the game where Coach Belichick is talking to people, and he's just like saying, listen, do your job. And your job in any particular situation may be to cover a certain player or go after the quarterback or make sure someone is covered when they're going out for a pass. But you have to know what your role is in that kind of situation. And his his role as the leader is to make sure that he puts the right players in the right situation so they can do their role. But it is a mantra of this organization, and it's plain and simple, right? It plays to strengths. It's all about understanding what a player's strength is. You know, if their strength is not to rush the quarterback, then you don't put them in that role to rush the quarterback. If their role is to cover one of the players who is trying to catch a ball, you make sure you put them in that strength. He plays to their strengths, and he understands what their strengths are so he can allow them to do their job, which requires trust. Part of doing your job is not just with the coach, with the players, but it's understanding the trust level amongst the players. So when there's 11 people on the field, each person knows their role, and each player is trusting that their teammate is going to be doing their role for that play. Because if they all do that, they're going to be very successful in that play. You could see that in the Super Bowl when they were coming back. Each player was built trust in terms of they were supposed to be where Tom Brady felt they needed to be, which allowed them to continue to come back in that game. There's a certain level of trust. But the other part of that trust level is, you know, believing in each other. The one thing that you heard quite a bit from comments is that no one was pointing fingers when they were down by so many points. There was a certain trust level where they all said, okay, we all need to kind of step up and make plays. But that's a trust in each of their teammate. And it's really, really important. And the key thing here about doing your job is practicing the fundamentals. The one thing that's over and over and over again that this organization does is they practice the fundamentals in practice, and they make sure that they are executed very well. So the fundamentals are a vital piece. They're not overlooked. And matter of fact, this organization and Coach Belichick will put the team through situations that sometimes you don't think in a particular game they'll hit, but sometimes they do, but they know what they need to do because they've practiced the fundamentals of that situation. So the key thing here is, what are the fundamentals in your organization? Are you making sure that they're being practiced consistently in your organization? Does your team do them well, or do they struggle? But more importantly, are they doing their job? Do they know what their role is, and is there a high degree of trust that the members of your team have with each other? That's the whole mantra of do your job. Matter of fact, this is part of the mantra when these new players come in that they totally understand. And guess what? This whole concept of doing your job is filtered down from players, from their star players all the way down to the players who are on their third string. They all buy into this whole concept of do your job. And lastly, what's really important of this organization is team first. It's all about checking egos at the door. As I mentioned earlier, you have players who are coming over from other organizations. And the one thing that they all talked about is that when they've come to this organization, they've kind of checked their ego at the door. Because it's all about the team. It's not about statistics. It's not about who has the most passes, who has the most rushing yards, how many times a quarterback has been sacked. It's all about the results. But more importantly, it's about the team. And the team is what's paramount to everything else. So part of the search when they look at people and when they're hiring people to come into this culture, they make it clear that the team is first. And it's about we. It's not about I, it's not me, it's about we. It's about how we need to, what we need to do as an organization to be successful. It's what we need to do to be able to win this particular football game. It's all about putting the team. And what's an interesting fact is now when you watch these Super Bowl games, the team just comes running out and they're announced as, you know, here's the champion, and they come out on the field before the game. Do you know the first team that actually did that was the New England Patriots? Because if you remember before, what was very interesting is that a particular team, either offense or their defense, each player would be announced individually, and they would run up, you know, to the 50-yard line before the game. So that's kind of how they used to do it. And that first Super Bowl win with the Patriots, the St. Louis Rams came out and they kind of worked with one of their particular units, but the Patriots said, no, we're coming out as a team, and we want you to announce us as a team. And I remember back then, Robert Kraft actually got fined because a unit wouldn't be announced, but he didn't care. He said, fine me. That's the culture of this team. They're the ones that started, and guess what? Now it's done all the time. That's a winning culture. So, as a leader, does your team come first? Do you have members of your teams who can check their ego at the door? Do you worry about the team being successful as a unit? Because that's a very important piece here. So these are 5 what I consider to be the most important, and then probably others. But these are the ones that strike out and hit me based on the work I do in terms of coaching leaders and organizations that I see a lot, in which the Patriots have great examples. So before I wrap up the show, all I have to say is this one thing. And Producer Bill, flash it up there. Do your job. As a leader, do your job. And we've talked about these things in various shows of what your job is. But today we've highlighted some of the key things that you can do as a leader. I want you to reflect on what you need to do as a leader to do your job more effectively. What do you need to do to make your teams a highly effective, successful team, just like the New England Patriots over the last 15, 16 years? Success leaves tracks, and it's real important for us as leaders to really look at those and see what we can do to put those not only in our leadership style, but in our organizations as well. So, in closing, if there's anything we can do to help you with your leadership needs, please reach out to us at www.getyouredge.com, and we'd be more than happy to help you to see what we can do to make you more effective as a leader or make your teams more effective. So we appreciate you tuning into today's show on the leadership lessons of the New England Patriots, and we'll see you next time on the Leadership Edge.